Last time on the Skip and Josh podcast.
The stupidest baseball injury you've heard of.
There's more stupid than the ones you've already talked about over the years, about hurting your back because of a hotel bed or twisting your arm because you're carrying luggage.
Zach Plesac on the Cleveland Indians, he fractured his thumb while taking off his shirt.
Must have been on pretty tight, or maybe had some tricky buttons that he couldn't handle.
This only happens to baseball players.
You're listening to the Skip and Josh podcast with Skip Sherman and Josh Obadia.
Okay, Skip, today we're going to talk about our most annoying / hated / dirtiest hockey players of all time. But before we get to that, and speaking of hockey, a lot has happened in the world of hockey since the last time we spoke. Seattle had their expansion draft, and the NHL had their regular draft, and NHL free agency has started. So there's a lot to talk about, but I don't want to spend too much time on the NHL, except to say that I looked at Seattle's roster, and I don't think they're going to be anywhere near as good as Vegas was in their first year.
I think we're looking at it in... First of all, the Seattle expansion draft was a joke. I don't get that. All the picks were leaked. Everybody knew who was picked that morning. And then they made this whole show. I was like, it was so useless.
Yeah, it was the funny part was some of the players, in theory, the players aren't supposed to know that they're picked until their name is announced. Yet the players were there wearing the jersey already. So clearly everybody knew.
But, they call it an expansion draft, right? But it's like what you say when, a league releases the schedule. So it's okay, they've sent a calendar, there's no draft. It's one team. So actually, all they did is just read a list.
Right. And that's why, you see, this is why Vegas was so good, because when they picked their team, there were no other expansion teams at the same time. Like when Tampa entered, and also when Ottawa entered, and Anaheim entered the league, and there's another team I'm forgetting.
Florida.
Yeah, there was always at least two that were entering the league at the same time. So they actually had to draft because, what happens if they take this guy, then we can't. But Vegas didn't have to worry about that, and Seattle didn't have to worry about that.
Anyway, Seattle's going to suck. I think they're going to be a real expansion team, and I wish them all the luck in the world. I like Ron Francis. I like the city of Seattle in general. I hope they're a good team, and I hope they do well.
Mailbag.
So do you have any listener mail from our last episode where we talked about our favorite cities?
So we did get quite a bit of response from our favorite cities. I guess people, after a year and a half of lockdown and not being able to travel, and people are itching to travel. So I think the cities episode really piqued people's interests, so to speak. An old buddy of yours, Josh, emailed us through our website. I actually didn't know who he is. His name is Pierre. And I forwarded it to you. And anyways, he said, "This was fun, Josh. I don't listen often because the sports podcasts are not for me. But this reminded me of our conversations at the arena." So I guess it's someone that you worked with way back when.
Yes.
That's cool. Thank you.
It was nice to hear from him,
Pierre. Yeah. Our good buddy Jesse down in Dallas, Texas, who does the Set Lusting Bruce podcast. He gave us his list. It's a really funny list. It's really like a tour of the American South almost. So he had, I'll go 1 to 7. He had New Orleans, San Francisco, Louisville, Kentucky, Memphis, Atlanta, Nashville, Pensacola, Florida. New Orleans is interesting because he has it at number 1, and I made a point of not having that anywhere near my list. And I've been to New Orleans many, many times, and I cannot stand New Orleans. I don't like it at all. And I made a real point of not putting it on my list. So, Jason, friend of ours here in Montreal, Barcelona, Prague, Rome, New York, Chicago, Dubrovnik, St. John's, Newfoundland. Have you ever been to St. John's, Newfoundland?
No, I think I've been to the other St. John's, which is actually St. John without an S.
I've never been there either. I'd love to go to Newfoundland. Another friend of the show, Jeff, here in the West Island, Jerusalem, Las Vegas, Barcelona, New York, Paris, Venice, Tel Aviv. So a big couple of Israeli cities there, I guess. Those mean a lot to him. I didn't put Las Vegas because I didn't put Las Vegas on my list on purpose also because I like Las Vegas. It's fun to go to, but you can't spend more than a couple of days there. So any city where you can't split after 2 days, you're like, I'm done here, shouldn't be in the list. And then Derek, of course, friend of the show, wrote us saying, a great episode, great lists. My 7 in random order: Vancouver, San Francisco, New York, London, Barcelona, Bangkok, and Singapore. But he said he may need to reconsider San Diego after listening to both of us gush about San Diego.
All right, that's great. Love all the listener mail.
I love it too. Yeah.
So, are we going to get into today's topic?
Yeah. Maybe do you want to reintroduce the topic, explain it, the criteria, if you had any, how you did your list, or?
Sure. So this is, how do I explain it? There are some hockey players in history that really annoy me. And most of them are goons. And so I wanted to do a list of the most annoying hockey players. And right. You can call them annoying, you can call them hated, and you can call them dirty. It's not a list of guys with most penalty minutes in their career. So it's not that. I mean, all these guys do have a lot of penalty minutes on my list, of course, but they're not in the top 25.
Me too. Most of the guys on my list, obviously they have they have considerable penalty minutes, but I would only consider 2 of my 7 as goons.
Okay.
Right? But that's interesting. Did you have a hard time making this list? Obviously, we always say, it was your choice, right? So it was your topic. So you must have had someone in mind as 1, 2, you had some names in your head rolling around.
Yeah, the top 4 were I didn't even have to think about them.
Really?
Yeah, no, they came instantly.
Right.
And then basically I had another 10 names, and I obviously narrowed it down to 7. Mm-hmm. So, maybe just finessing the order might have been the only challenging part for me, but yeah.
So I told you, I Googled most hated NHL players. Believe it or not, there's many, many lists already made of most hated NHL players on different websites. It's really funny. Just to get the ball rolling, and and then I would see one name, and then one name would lead to another. And I did have some names in my head. Look, obviously we're Canadiens fans. Everybody knows that who's listened to us. We're Montreal Canadiens people. We're Montrealers. Well, you're an ex-Montrealer, but I mean, if you're a Bruins fan, you're going to hate my list. Put it that way.
Yeah, I mean,
right?
We could have just said only Bruins players allowed. We still could have done this.
I mean, I don't have only Bruins, but I have a few, So if you're a Bruins fan, you're not going to like the list. And if you are a Bruins fan, you probably have Claude Lemieux on your list, or Chris Nyland, or Brendan Gallagher might even be there, or whoever, so obviously, your fandom and your point of view will definitely, affect your choices here, because it's definitely this is a very subjective list for sure, and a kind of goes on emotion, rather than facts. So I have a few honorable mentions. Do you have, or do you want to read them? Or
I'm not doing my honorable mentions because there's too many of them, but I just Googled the list of, all-time penalty minute leaders in the NHL.
Yeah.
And
who's number 1? Tiger Williams?
I think so, but that's not what I wanted to mention.
Yeah.
My top guy, the guy on my list with the most penalty minutes is 89th out of everybody. So I don't have anybody in the top 88 on my list.
There you go. All right. Well, I'm going to give you my honorable mentions, and you're
okay.
going to tell me. You'll tell me. I'll just see if your reaction. I'll know if they're on your list. So recency bias. We just came out of this big playoff. I got Kucherov and Scheifele on the honorable mentions just because they've annoyed me recently. Scheifele, believe it or not, more than Kucherov, because Scheifele was a real big dick about that hit on Jake Evans, and
he certainly was.
There's the expression, you double down, you double. He's tripled and quadrupled down on his comments and defending his actions. Kucherov's just a jerk. You can't help that. He's going to be what he's going to be, I have Dale Hunter on the list, and I didn't want to put him in the top 7 because while I definitely hated him while he was a player on the Nordiques, he's still a player that I really respect, I always say, I've said it so many times on different topics, if this guy's on your team, you love him, right? That's never been more true than Dale Hunter. Right?
So Dale Hunter, by the way, number 2 career all-time penalty minutes.
That's also a factor of how many years he played, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then other people in the honorable mentions, Marty McSorley, mostly because of one incident. where he tried to take someone's head off with his stick, baseball style. Kenny Linsman. I have great memories of the Bruins Canadian series of the early 80s with Kenny Linsman. And then newer players, Nazem Kadri, just because he's a complete loser. And then probably one of the dirtiest players in the history of the NHL, Matt Cook, because he tried to kill many of his union members. He was a fellow athletes, and no one seemed to care until eventually he kind of he got a talking to from his teammates, and he tried to turn himself around. But when players like that can't be effective unless they play their way, right? Like Matt Cook's can't just become a scorer now,
Right. Well, He can't become anything now because he doesn't play anymore.
Yeah, right. So that's my honorable mentions. I don't know. Do you have any? Those were also on yours, or?
My only honorable mention are the Hanson brothers from the movie Slapshot, but I actually like them a lot.
Yeah. Well, they're goons for sure, but you love them, right?
Exactly.
So. All right. So let's hear your most hated NHL players of all time, Josh, starting at number 7.
Number 7.
Okay. First on my list is from the Broad Street Bullies, Bobby Clarke with 1,453 career penalty minutes. And you know what? The dirtiest thing that he ever didn't even happen in the NHL. It happened in an international hockey game against Russia, which of course I was maybe 2 years old at the time, but I've seen the replay many, many times, where he basically took out one of their best players, if not their best player, which helped Canada win some games. So he's number 7 on my list.
But I'm surprised that he's number 7. Like, of course, Bobby Clarke was dirty, but he was a great player in his right in terms of scoring as well. But do you have bad feelings for Bobby Clarke? We were so little when he was playing.
I don't really have bad feelings, but I when I saw that play,
yeah,
of course I was much older when I finally saw it. I'm like, well, that's not the right way to win a hockey game.
Yeah. I know Bobby Clarke is celebrated as being this great leader, but really, actually, he just broke someone's ankle so his team could win.
Right.
So number 7 for me, and people are going to roll their eyes and they're going to say, Skip, you're such a homer, you're such a Habs fan. But number 7 is Zdeno Chara. Now, obviously, I do have respect for Zdeno Chara as a player. He's a great NHL defenseman. And Bruins fans, I know people who are Bruins fans, and I always told them, the one thing that the Bruins had in the last decade-ish of this successful time for the Bruins, where they won one cup and I think they made it to another final, is that they had Zdeno Chara. This guy was so much better at his position than anybody else, and could dominate a game better than anybody else. That's what tipped the scales for the Bruins in many games. But that play where he almost killed Max Pacioretty, and when I say almost killed, I'm not exaggerating. That was the closest we've ever seen in the NHL to having a player die on the ice. I actually did think he was dead. I thought that we just witnessed something completely tragic that we've never seen before. But it's all the stuff after that really pissed me off. He's like, "Oh, I wasn't trying to be dirty. I was just lining up a hit. I didn't realize the stanchion was there." That's all bull. He knew exactly what he was doing. He was trying to hurt Pacioretty. Anybody, most people look at that hit and are like, all they look at it is that one play, right? But anybody who followed the Canadiens and Bruins closely during those times knows that this was brewing for 2-3 seasons, right? There was bad blood between Chara and Pacioretty after every skirmish in front of the net. Chara was trying to smash Pacioretty every opportunity he could in every single game. And then it came to a head with this ridiculous play where he smashed him into what they call the stanchion, something that no one ever heard of until we found out it's called the stanchion.
Number 6.
So that's a very good choice. And the next guy on my list was also a member of the Boston Bruins. Mm-hmm. And his name is Jay Miller. And he had 1,723 career penalty minutes. And the most notable fight that Jay Miller ever had was not with a player, but with a door at the Forum. And I believe he lost that fight to the door because he actually tried to kick it and fell.
Yeah, I remember that play so well. I didn't really hate Jay Miller that much. He was just annoying because he didn't do anything. Those are the days where you had guys on your team that were just there to fight, and that's what he did, right? So he had a fight with Chris Nyland. He lost the fight, and then he went and he smashed the door, and he lost the fight again with the door.
And I think he's also in the movie Youngblood, if I'm not mistaken.
It's very possible. It's very possible. Number 6 for me is a player who was drafted by the Montreal Canadiens, but he went on to have more success with the Toronto Maple Leafs, and that's Darcy Tucker.
There's a song by, I think it's Blink 182, All the Small Things.
Mm-hmm.
I think a radio station in Montreal changed the words to that song. Darcy Tucker, that little.
Yeah, that's perfect. I mean, he, again, in the category of you like him when he's on your team, you hate him when he's on the opposition. When there's player like Tucker wasn't a goon because he was small. He didn't fight a lot, but he's what you call like the pest, or the evolved version of the pest, which they call the super pest. You know, he would just skate around causing trouble, and oh God, he was so annoying to play against. But then the Canadiens got their revenge on maybe one of the dirtiest hits in history, and you can YouTube it. People have watched the YouTube replay of it a million times. In 2006, Alexei Kovalev completely blindside hit on Darcy Tucker. Like it's one of the most dirty hits you could ever see, but it's also one of the most celebrated hits by Canadiens fans, that we love it, you know, because he it's like he got all his revenge on Darcy Tucker in one play, and it was really dirty.
Number 5.
So I guess I'm up to number 5, and he no longer plays either. Career 1,533 penalty minutes. And since you mentioned super pest, this guy definitely falls under the category of super pest, and it is Sean Avery.
Oh,
Sean Avery, and I remember him as a New York Ranger. I know he played for other teams as well. And he never really did anything annoying to the Montreal Canadiens. He was more annoying to the New Jersey Devils and to Martin Brodeur. But he was really annoying and did stuff that, I mean, you just don't do that kind of stuff. Like he stood in front of the goalie and he'd wave his stick around, and he wouldn't even look at the play. Like he was facing the goalie, so he had no clue what was going on in the play at all. Just totally just wanted to be annoying, and he's the poster boy for this list.
He is the poster boy for the list, and that's a great pick, Josh. And I'm going to tell you another great pick, my number 5, someone that I know you're going to agree with, and that's Tom Wilson. Now, Tom Wilson, you know, so far everybody on the list, we've given reasons and, you know, I gave examples, whatever. But the problem with Tom Wilson is the list is too big. The list of annoying, dirty things that he's done is too big. Like the guy has no business being in the NHL. He could have been in the NHL in the 80s. He probably wouldn't have lasted because I don't think he's as good a fighter as people think. He's only a good fighter in this era when, you know, the fights are few and far between. But he's like the ultimate like non-tough guy who thinks he's a tough guy, and he goes around doing dirty plays year after year, and somehow the NHL doesn't suspend him enough. Like they think that they need this violence in hockey. Anyways, Tom Wilson's number 5. I bet you he's number 1 on your list, and we'll go to the next one.
Number 4.
So next on my list is someone that you mentioned in your honorable mentions. He's injured many opponents in his career. He no longer plays, and that is Matt Cook. And I know him as a Pittsburgh Penguin, but he's definitely injured Erik Karlsson when he basically stepped on his ankle and claimed that it wasn't on purpose. And we'll never really know, but he's injured other players. He ended up with 1,135 career penalty minutes, and I'm actually not upset that he's no longer in the league.
His dirtiest play was actually Mark Savard on the Bruins. He ended his career. Like Mark Savard never played after that. He had concussions and he tried to come back and he couldn't. And Matt Cook was crazy dirty. I mean, that's unreal. So that was your number 4, right? I'm on my number 4 now.
Correct.
A goalie's going to make the list, Josh.
Oh, a goalie. There's no goalies on my list.
There's only one goalie that could be in the dirtiest players, and you know who it is. It's Ron Hextall.
Oh, I was thinking Billy Smith.
Billy Smith was the original guy that used to chop people, you know, that would stand in front of the net. And then, of course, Ron Hextall used to do that too. But then in 1989, Ron Hextall took it to a whole new level because, in a playoff game against the Canadiens, in sort of just a random point in one of the games, puck goes into the corner or goes out of bounds and everybody's just skating around getting ready to go to the bench. Hextall charges out of the net and jumps Chris Chelios. Like, he just attacks him. and the weirdest thing is, like, I never understood, like, what he had against Chelios. Like, Chelios never stood in front of the net in front of Hextall. Like, they could have never had an actual confrontation where the two of them actually even touched each other. You know what I mean? Being a defenseman and a goalie. So it's super, super weird to this day. I don't get, like, what Chelios did to get under Hextall's skin. I mean, look, Hextall's was a pretty good goalie, all things considered. He was a great puck handler. He was like the original. I mean, everyone talks about Marty Brodeur as the best puck handling defenseman, but Hextall was like the original guy that used to come out of the net and play the puck. Yeah. Anyway, so he's for Canadiens fans, no matter what he does in his career or what he did, he's always going to remember for that stupid play where he jumped Chelios. That just for that, he's number 4 on my list.
That's an excellent pick. And he was also celebrated in an episode of The Goldbergs.
In that episode of The Goldbergs, they go to the hockey game and they leave early, and then they find out that they missed Hextall scoring a goal, right?
Exactly. That's the episode I'm referring to.
Yeah.
Number 3.
Okay, number 3 for me, another former Bruin. This guy actually, and I think all the top 3 on my list still play in the NHL. They're all active players. So number 3 on my list, with 1,172 career penalty minutes and counting, is Milan Lucic, who just, even though he's not on Boston anymore, he has a face that you just want to punch.
He looks like he has no brain in his head. He's like the ultimate, like, Neanderthal out there, So I love when this happens. I said it last episode. I love when this happens. Milan Lucic is number 3 on my list. Is number 3 on my list as
Perfect.
well. Now, I want to preface this by saying, like, so far, like, my 4, 5, 6, 7, they're all based on sort of dirty plays that they did, right? Like, actual plays on the ice. Whereas my 3, 2, and 1 are players that surpass that. They're on my list because of stuff that crossed another line. Like, not a play where an actual physical hit happens, but like something else. So the reason why I hate Lucic is because he violated, like, the sanctity of the handshake line that happens at the end of the playoffs. Like who does that? Everybody loves the handshake line at the end of the playoff series.
Was that against Dale Weiss when he was shaking Dale Weiss's hand?
It was Weiss and Alexei Emelin. It was both, but it was Weiss in the line. And he basically told Emelin in the handshake line that next year he was going to kill him, there was stuff said in the handshake line. Now, maybe there's stuff said in the handshake line all the time. Maybe this happens all the time and we just don't know about it. But you know what? We just don't know about it, because there's a reason why we don't know about it, is because normal people, regular people who have some degree of sportsmanship, don't start blabbing that they threatened you in the handshake line, right? So Lucic, just for like the ultimate unsportsmanlike type of move, is number 3 on my list.
Right, I do remember that, and I'm glad you brought it up.
Number 2.
So I'm on number 2, and I think you already mentioned this guy on your list. Current Washington Capital, Tom Wilson.
Oh. Wow.
So yes, it's funny how he's on both our lists, and he could have been number 1, but he's only number 2 on mine. I think he was number 4 on yours. But
the only reason why he's not number 1 for either of us is because we don't really care about the Capitals. The Capitals are not a rival to us. They're just another team in the league that we follow.
Right.
I guarantee you, if a Ranger fan makes this list, Tom Wilson's number 1.
Wilson's number 1, absolutely. So,
and by the way, the Rangers signed Ryan Reeves yesterday.
I saw that. I wonder if that's to counter Tom Wilson.
Yeah, so I can't wait for the first Rangers Capitals game this year. It should be interesting.
It should be. And, well, he definitely deserves to be on this list, and he could also be the poster boy for this list.
So I have number 2. I'm staying with the Boston Bruins. It's a player that you probably didn't think of, and that's Andrew Ference.
You're right. I didn't think of him.
Now, Andrew Ference was a perfectly good NHL defenseman, played on the Bruins. Wasn't a goon by any means. Exactly. Josh, for those of you watching on the live stream, Josh just gave me the finger. So, yeah. I mean, Ferentz wasn't a goon. He was a decent player, fairly physical. But in a 2011 playoff series against the Canadiens, he gave the finger to the fans at the Bell Center. And then I wouldn't have cared about that. But when asked about it, he was like, "Oh, I had a equipment malfunction. It was my glove had a problem. It looked like I was giving the finger, but I wasn't."
That was the most hilarious excuse I've ever heard.
It's the dumbest thing in the world because everybody knew he was lying his ass off. And then, of course, one whole year later passed, and then they asked him about it, and he's like, "Yeah, I gave the fans the finger." So he just should have said it. He just should have said it at the moment. He's like, "Yeah, I lost my composure. I shouldn't have done that. I have respect for the fans. They cheer for their team. Our fans cheer for our team." Like he could have diffused the whole thing, but he took, like most of the players on this list, like he took the low road instead of the high road, because players that make this list don't have any like understanding of sportsmanship. So that's number 2. Now, we're at your number 1. I really don't know who your number 1's going to be. I really thought it was going to be Tom Wilson, and now I'm not sure who it is.
Number 1.
I wouldn't be surprised if we have the same number 1.
We don't, because my number 1 was already in your list.
Okay. So my number 1 is still an active player, and he actually only has 802 career penalty minutes, which is low by these standards.
Yeah.
But again, he's still playing, so that number could grow and will grow. And he is a Boston Bruin, and his name is Brad Marchand. And I know that he has a lot of goals, and I know that he's on the top line, and I know that he's played for Team Canada, but I don't care, because this guy is definitely my most hated player in the league. For the stuff that he does, the antics, like licking players and kicking players, and I think he actually spit on a player once as well. This guy he just doesn't deserve to be in the league, in my opinion. And so he's definitely number 1 on my list.
The only reason why I didn't put him anywhere near the list is because I feel in the last few years he's changed. He's kind of accepted the fact that he's a star in the league and he doesn't have to do that stupid stuff anymore. And he scores lots of goals and he's much more of a skilled player. So I'm kind of giving him the benefit of the doubt. But you know what? I thought about putting him in the list. Obviously, like all I did was go down the list of Bruins, and he should be there. But yeah, that's a good pick. I mean, that's a good pick. Well, obviously, like I said at the beginning, this is a subjective list. If you hate him, then you hate him. You can't ignore your feelings.
I hate him.
So number 1 on my list is Sean Avery, who was on your list. I put Sean Avery on the list, like I said before, not because of one specific hit or all the dirty plays. He led the league in penalties, I'm sure, at least once or twice. I'm almost positive of that. It's because all the stuff that he did sort of that took his antics to the next level. Like, there's never been a bigger attention seeker in the league than this guy. Like, everybody, his whole raison d'etre is look at me, look at me, look at me, look at me. That's his whole thing. And like, we don't need this guy. And actually, I mean, obviously you mentioned the screening of Martin Brodeur, which was absolutely making a mockery of hockey, the game that he's playing. And then of course they made the Avery rule. You can't do that anymore. But like, it was the whole thing with Alicia Cuthbert, who, come on, Alicia Cuthbert, we love her, right?
Of course we do.
We loved her ever since we saw her in 24. So, when he comes out and he starts talking trash about a player's girlfriend, that's beyond stupidity, like that. And he paid the price for it, because the NHL suspended him after he made those comments that day, and the Dallas Stars suspended him and then eventually released him because of all that controversy about his comments that he made about other players' girlfriends. Like, because they realized, like, basically what I read recently about it is that whoever was the sort of leadership of the Dallas Stars at the time, Mike Modano was one of them, and I think it was Marty Turco, basically went to the GM of the Stars and said, "Get this guy off our team. We don't want him here."
Good. I'm glad to hear that. I didn't know all those details that you just mentioned, but I certainly recall the incident. And yeah, you don't do that stuff.
No, I didn't know them either, but just because when making this list, I read up about it, to get some more details. So yeah, that's Sean Avery. Apparently he works for like a fashion magazine now somewhere in New York. I don't know.
Yeah, I think I read that somewhere too.
So yeah, that's my list. Good list, Josh. I really like that.
Yeah, I liked yours too.
It was fun to compile, and I enjoyed doing it.
The Skip and Josh podcast is available wherever you listen to podcasts. If you listen to the show through Apple Podcasts, please leave a review. To interact with the show, send an email to skipandjoshshow@gmail.com. Follow the show on Twitter and go to Facebook to like the show page. And now for some final thoughts from the guys.
So, you have anything you want to end the show with? Like, I could tell you, like, my time since we last spoke is 100% watching the Olympics. I don't understand how much time I watch the Olympics. I never stop. It's on all the time, first of all. Whether it's live or on tape, it's on all the time. You can watch any sport. Suddenly I became an expert on fencing and skateboarding and I'm watching all kinds of stuff. So the Olympics is fun. It's fun.
Well, it's intense because, it's on 23 hours a day. So you just turn on your television. You don't even have to look for it. It's right there. Or if you prefer to watch a specific sport live, you can do that online. So you can't really get away with it, get away from it, I should say. And it's, what is it, 18 consecutive days, right? So there you go. What I was going to mention is just yesterday actually was the baseball trade deadline. And I don't recall a week in the baseball season where there were A, this many trades, and B, this many high profile players changing teams. I mean, basically the Cubs gutted their team. The Nationals gutted their team. The Dodgers, who already had like possibly the best roster in baseball, just added 2 All-Stars. So it's like, I mean, I don't know who's going to win or what's going to happen, because just because you get these guys at the trade deadline doesn't guarantee you a World Series. But it certainly was an interesting week if you're a baseball fan.
The trade deadline in any sport is always interesting because you have these rental players and teams just giving up. But I've never seen teams give up to this extent. Like literally, like Washington got rid of their entire team except for Soto. Like everybody, right? Soto is the only guy left, right? And I feel kind of bad for Chicago, and well, I don't feel bad for Nats fans because they stole our team, but those are recent World Series winners, right? The Cubs, fairly recent, and the Nationals, much more recent. And those teams are like, when I say teams, I mean the teams that won the World Series, the core of players that won the World Series, where you still have hope as a fan that like, oh yeah, we have Anthony Rizzo, we have Bryant, we have, if you're a Nationals fan, we have Scherzer, and we have like that hope's gone, like your expansion teams now,
By the way, the Nationals didn't trade this guy, but Steven Strasburg is out for the season, and I think he's pitched a grand total of maybe 50 innings since he signed his huge contract, and he might never pitch again.
No, I mean, we know about Strasburg. He's very delicate. He's a delicate flower. So, I mean, that's probably the only reason why they didn't trade him, because no team wants him, right?
So it just goes to show you, and I think after the Nationals won the World Series, we had an episode where you may have asked me if they were going to win the World Series again the following season, and I told you no chance they're going to repeat, because I can't remember the last time a team repeated. It's the hardest thing to do. So basically, if you win the World Series, you should have a fire sale the next day, because you're not winning the World Series again with the same roster.
It's really hard. Actually, I'm going through my head now of World Series winners to see who repeated, and I can't really... There's teams that won World Series in close years.
Yeah, San Francisco won 3 World Series in a span of 6 years or something.
Right, and the Cardinals may have won a couple with a year or two apart, or
yeah, I don't remember the last time it happened. Well, maybe I really don't.
Maybe it's going to be the Yankees, like the Derek Jeter Yankees.
Right? Must be, because it's not the Red Sox, it's not the Dodgers.
Yeah, no, it has to be the Yankees. Wow, that just goes to show that's a long time. That's 20 years. So I'm very active on Twitter.
Yes.
I found the best account. It's called the Tweet of God. It's at Tweet of God. So the guy's picture is like a very looks like God. I don't know, whatever you think God looks like, like Moses sort of, an older guy with gray hair, whatever. And he tweets like really like funny stuff, like very like what God would tweet, right? Now the funniest thing about the Tweet of God is The Tweet of God has 6 million followers, but the Tweet of God only follows one other account. One. The only person that he follows is Justin Bieber.
That's hilarious.
It's honestly like, if you just read the tweets, they're funny and you whatever. But if you look into the account, the actual funniest thing that account has ever done is that he only follows one, and it's Justin Bieber. It's really, really hysterical. When I saw that, I couldn't believe it. I was dying.
Do we know for sure that Justin Bieber doesn't manage the Tweet of God account?
We don't know for sure. And actually, there's been a lot of controversy lately about athletes having these burner tweet accounts, especially NBA athletes, right? They're like, I'm off Twitter. People are like, I'm off Twitter. And then next thing you know, they're still tweeting on their different accounts, you know, trying to find out what their fans are saying about them. Like Kevin Durant is supposedly famous for this, but...
Well, if you're gonna be on Twitter and you're a famous person, then you should definitely not use your real name.
No. Or if you are, you can't read the comments. Like if I was famous and I was on Twitter, like you can't read the comments. All you're going to get is people hating you. That's just the nature of social media. So either go on and tweet what you want. Like honestly, like I give Jeannie Bouchard the most respect, not because I'm madly in love with her, but I give her a lot of respect because she's got millions of followers on social media, and everything she posts, more than half the things are negative, you know, and she just keeps posting, you know, like she doesn't care. She's gonna enjoy like her actual fans, and she does a great job of ignoring the haters, you know. So that's how you have to be, or don't be on it, you know, basically.
I was about to ask you, what is the topic for our next episode?
I had a difficult time trying to figure one out. I asked my wife for some suggestions last night because I have a big list of topics, but I don't love a lot of them, you know? So, you know, we're in the age, Josh, of like Spotify and Apple Music, right? Streaming, right? So you get all your music on demand whenever you want it, and you just listen to it on your phone, and it's great because everything's at your fingertips. But you remember when we were young, buying an album, opening it up, looking at the album, looking at the liner notes. I mean, you being you probably smelled the paper.
Paper always smelled good.
You know, so like the creative process around making an album, the aesthetics and the visuals of an album is lost now. I mean, they still do them, but people don't pay attention. So I'd like to do our favorite album covers.
Oh, that's good. You know what? None of them are going to be in the last decade because I don't even know any album cover from the last decade. Exactly,
yeah. I mean, I know I'm giving you a lot of homework. I'm sorry, because this is not something you can easily kind of...
Well, no, I'm going to have to go look through all my CDs.
Yeah. Even CDs, I used to like the covers, you know, and you still used to read the lyrics or the liner notes. Now that's a lost art, you know. So
great, I like this topic. So yes, and by the way, I don't have them here, but I do have some vinyl albums.
Very nice. All right, so in 2 weeks, we're going to line up our favorite album covers.
Beautiful.
Okay.
Okay, well, have a great 2 weeks.